Welcome to the Bruce Teeley Virtual Tasting by Hemera Estate. As Rachel mentioned, I'm Russell Cutting, currently the winemaker here. So we've got a pretty good spread of wines tonight, a white, a rosé, and then a plethora of our red wines. We are focusing predominantly on the 2017 vintage, just with the exception of the rosé. So I suppose I'll give a bit of a background on the vintage itself, vintages in this point, just so I don't have to reiterate all that often, and then we'll go from there. 2017 was quite an atypical vintage for pretty much all of Australia. It was, I suppose, typical of 20 years ago, but in recent times, quite a bit different. So really one of the last wet winters that we had, and then a really, that rain continued into spring, and then a cooler than average summer and then autumn ripening period. So vintage, I suppose, would be considered delayed by about 2 to 4 weeks. But if you look back about 20 years ago, it was what would be considered normal back then. What that means in terms of viticulture and harvest, it allows the fruit to kind of ripen optimally. It's a little bit slower, and the cool nights allowed for higher acid retention in the wine. This kind of takes a little bit of the pressure off of us, something as winemakers we've been experiencing more and more early vintages and compressed vintages, where the fruit it's obviously ripening earlier, but the varieties which used to be spread out, you could pick week to week to week, are being compressed quite considerably. So, you're getting only about 3 to 4 days instead of 7. So dragging it back with 17, that allowed us to have a better control over when to pick those varieties, and also took a bit of pressure off in the winery, which then let us kind of nurture those wines through fermentation instead of being pushed through, because if everything's ripening at the same time, you're kind of forced to push those ferments a little bit faster than normal, just so you don't run out of space. So that's basically the vintage conditions for 17. And then for the rosé, the 2018, back to what's considered normal of these times, quite a bit warmer, and that just allows for a kind of a little bit more inflated sugars. So the rosé itself is almost 14% alcohol, so just be mindful of that one. So that's the two vintage conditions there. So we're going to be starting, hopefully if you've got them laid out on those nice tasting mats, the bottom left, number 1, which is our Adelaide Hills Chardonnay. So this is one of 2 of the wines tonight that is not 100% estate. Barossa Valley isn't particularly conducive towards growing a lot of white wine. There is a movement towards some of those Italian and Spanish varieties, but Chardonnay, it's just a little bit warm. So we went to the Adelaide Hills, which obviously, besides Tasmania, is probably one of the better wine growing regions. This was actually sourced from a single vineyard near Birdwood, and one of the ones that supplies fruit for the Reserve A, in Reserve A for Penfolds. And both myself and our consultant winemaker, Jason Barrett, have worked for them. So we certainly like to use those connections and those styles and those vineyards. And as such, this was, picked basically in the same weekend as the Reserve A for that year. And by the time we got it to the winery, we looked after it in a very similar way. So in terms of winemaking style, it was pretty hands-off. We crushed the fruit and then stuck it to press, separated the skins from the juice, and then chucked it straight into a combination of new and old French oak hogsheads. We didn't inoculate at all with this one. We didn't select a known yeast. We just allowed ferment to occur, I suppose, wild. A lot of people use the word natural, but I don't think there's anything natural about wine. We allowed wild fermentation to occur and basically just kept the yeast happy, made sure they got a bit of oxygen and food throughout the ferment. And then we didn't inoculate secondary ferment, the malolactic either. So basically we just let the wine make itself in that aspect. And then did what we call batonnage, so just stirring of the lees in order to build a complexity. I see a phantom hand over my left shoulder with Rachel. That's okay. So we didn't have to add any acid because of that cooler year. And we just basically continually tasted that wine, mucked around with it when we needed to build it up with batonnage. And then when it was after 9 months, we're pretty happy with it. So there was no fining with this wine, but just a light filtration, sterile filtration to make sure that nothing occurred afterwards. So the idea behind that is the more you kind of aggressively fine and filter a wine to make sure it's clear and bright and fresh, the more you can take out of it. So we thought this was looking pretty sharpish as it was. It was potentially released a little bit early. 2017 with that really high acid left this wine feeling quite tight to begin with. So it didn't get quite the reviews we were hoping for, as you can see, only 90 points there. But now in 2020, with 2 years in the bottle, it's really starting to open up, and I think this Chardonnay certainly has the potential to go for the long haul. So, oh yeah, and certainly while I'm rambling on about all this, I do encourage you to be getting around that wine. It is a personal experience, and I'll be certainly telling you what I'm looking at and seeing, but enjoy it as you will. So it does help that we've given you a white tasting mat so you can see the color of the wine over it. You'll notice that it's still really showing almost a green hue. This wine was made oxidatively. We didn't handle it too harsh with sulfur, and that means it's not going to show too much of that premature oxidation early on. You might see a little bit of straw in there as well, but this is what I would call a Chardonnay still very much in its infancy. Nose, as I mentioned, this was full barrel ferment, full malolactic fermentation, batonnage. This was roughed around quite a bit. You will start to see a little bit of those kind of developing characters, hopefully a little bit of the kind of bready, brioche, yeast-like characters coming through. But hopefully you'll still see a lot of that young purity of fruit that's often present in Chardonnay. So just your white stone fruit, maybe a little bit of citrus as well. But certainly not looking too blousy as a lot of those Chardonnays did back in the 1990s, where they were a touch over oaked and a little bit clunky, I suppose, a little bit clumsy. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So again, 17, that really cool year, plenty of acid, racy acidity on the palate there, particularly almost puckering on the cheeks. But overall, I think this, as I mentioned before, the Chardonnay is really starting to hit its stride now. It does have balance. I am pretty happy that all of our wines are sealed under Stelvin screw top, so they're not under any threat of oxidation in the immediate future. And this one certainly, while I think it's ready to start to drink now, is something that we could be looking at quite favourably down the track, anywhere from 5 to 7 years. So, yeah, that's basically all I would like to say about that wine. If there are any questions about that, please send them to Rachel, and we'll look at that in after the next one. So, as we mentioned, every 2 wines we'll take a bit of a look at any questions or otherwise. Cool. Let's have my little cleanser, make sure we're hydrated. Sparkling water, of course. So, working our way to the next one, we've got our rosé. So the only non-2017 wine. So we have the 2018 Grenache Rosé. And this wine is sourced from two of our blocks, our Grenache blocks, one of which is over 100 years old. So that was planted in 1912, but I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next wine, the Old Vine Grenache. That only plays a small part in this wine. The majority comes from its sister block, a little bit further down the hillside, the block 2B, which was planted a lot more recently, I think 1970s from memory. 1990s, I apologise. So about 30 years old, it almost constitutes as Old Vine Grenache itself, but definitely young by comparison. So this rosé is a bit of a twofold process. The younger Grenache is picked specifically for a rosé style, and it is basically crushed and held on skins for a short amount of time, and then pressed into stainless steel, where we will then inoculate it with a known yeast and ferment it at a very cool temperature. And that's providing a lot of the fruit-derived characters in this wine. So that light red fruit, cherry, strawberry, glacé. The other part is from that Old Vine Grenache. And in this case, what we do there is a method saignée, a bit of a bleed off. So when we crush that Grenache into a fermenter, we will basically take a portion, a few hundred litres, depending on how much we crush, normally about 5 to 8%. And what that will do is concentrate what's left in that fermenter, which I'll get into with the Old Vine Grenache itself. But that bleed off is definitely really good for making rosé. So instead of stainless steel, we'll do what we did with the Chardonnay. We'll transfer it into some French oak, old French oak in this case, and basically put it in a nice 20-degree room and let the native yeast in the air do the job for us. So that undergoes complete wild fermentation as well. And then we'll do a fair bit of lees stirring as well and really build up that component of the Grenache. So the purpose of that is to give it a little bit of complexity, a little bit of body and richness. And you'll see a little bit of that yeast-like autolytic creamy texture as well. So a small percentage of that will go through the secondary ferment to soften the acid out a little bit. And then we'll basically pick the best barrels of that experiment and blend it with what we have in tank to create this wine. Again, a lot of people are under the assumption that a rosé, much like some of the white wines, is to be drunk, before it's bottled almost immediately. But this is sitting quite well at 2 years old, and I think again has that potential to just go a little bit further as well. The other thing that I would always kind of recommend with a rosé, much like a Chardonnay, is once you've pulled it out of the fridge, leave it out of the fridge and let it warm up over the course of the evening, over the course of the bottle, and let that kind of develop in the glass. And you'll see it kind of transition from quite fresh and dewy fruity to a little bit rounder, and you start to see more of the savoury characters, particularly one like this, which has had a fair bit of lee stirring. Because this was pretty much pressed straight off skin or extracted straight away, it's got that almost orange salmon hue to it. It's certainly not, there's rich red rosés of before. No. You are seeing a little bit of a transition back to that over the years, a little bit more of that blush that people associate with it. But this has been fermented all the way through. It's completely dry. There's next to no residual sugar in this one. It's not a semi-sweet. It's meant to be quite tactile, pretty much drunk like the Germans do, or the French do. Instead of beer, they'll have a rosé, and certainly food friendly. it did pick up a little bit of a reductive character from the barrels. So, you know, some people will see a little bit of that sulfide, kind of smoky gunflint, a little bit of slatiness to it. Almost a little bit of spice has been picked up from that barrel as well. So for me, it's quite an interesting, you know, complex style of wine. I am normally pretty happy to, like I say, sit down with this for a good couple of hours and pair it with a couple of dishes just to see what it can do. I'd probably be having it with a bit of tuna belly if I had the option though. So that was our first little bracket of 2 wines. I hope you enjoyed those. We're going to have just a short interlude where we draw the first of our door prizes. So if anyone needs to get yourself a glass of water or go to the bathroom or anything, it'll be all of a minute or two. So tonight we'll be drawing 3 door prizes of our fortified Semillon, a white fortified. We've been told that you're lucky enough to have quite a sizable club fortified, so we thought something a little bit different, being a white Semillon based fortified, that might be something interesting for you all. So I've got the box, so they're all folded. I don't know who's who. I'm going to grab this one. And our first winner tonight is Peter Frick, number 1.
Hey, well done, Peter.
Not cheating. I'm sure it's back to front. It's not liking me, but yeah, Peter Frick. There we go. Excellent. So we'll keep that one to the side, and we'll talk about how to arrange that later on. Not again. Oh no, it sounds like Peter has a bit of a habit of winning the prize. That's no good. Oh well. So, Rachel, have you seen any questions?
No, I haven't, but just let everyone know that as far as we're aware, we are.
Okay. It doesn't seem that there are any questions. Rachel just asked me to say that as far as we're aware so far, we are on unlimited time tonight, so we shouldn't have any issues if I blather on too much about the wines.
Although we will try and keep it to about 1:10.
She is going to try to crack the whip and keep me to 1:10 though, so we'll see how she goes with that. Okay, wonderful. Well, I hope you're enjoying this as much as I am. This is certainly an experience for me as well. I think I'm seeing most people are back. Seems like it. Hope so, but as I said, thankfully we're recording, so if anyone does miss a snippet, they can go back and revisit it. Wine number 3, very, as I mentioned, closely related to the rosé. We now are moving to our dry table red Grenache style, and this is 100% sourced from our old vine Grenache Block 2B. So they are the oldest plantings we have here at the estate. They were planted in 1912. And they're these really twisted, gnarly old dudes at the back of the property. They've got holes splitting through the trunk. I really do get a bit of a kick walking through those vines. When we're doing a bit of fruit sampling, it's always nice to see a bit of history there. Barossa Valley, of course, known for being one of the oldest and original fortified regions of Australia. So it was, it would have been, I suppose, used for that back in its heyday. But now we're lucky enough to be able to create a table wine from it. So we do irrigate these guys when they need it, but their root system is pretty strong. The framework would be quite deep, so they do have a pretty ready access to water. So they don't need as much love, huh? You've got that. Excellent, Ron. I see you've got a glass there. So this is one of the ones that, you know, once it's crushed into the fermenter, we do the bleed off. The idea behind that is to concentrate the flavour. We're not making this to be one of those light, dubby styles. It is a pretty serious Grenache. I've worked in southern France in Châteauneuf-du-Pape, and it's a very similar style there, where you are making a wine that certainly can be approached with a couple of years under the belt, but it's certainly no slouch. It's not going to pull any punches whatsoever. We'll do pump overs on this one twice a day for as long as we think the wine can handle it. We are trying to build up a fair bit of tannic structure in that wine. We do try to keep it pretty cool as well. We don't want to blow off too much of the fruit. So the idea is to build the framework of tannin with those pump overs, but keep the ferment cool and as long as possible. So 2 weeks is quite preferable. If I can push it longer, I will. And that's to, yeah, just preserve as much of that lovely varietal character as possible. So Grenache is seeing a little bit of a renaissance, which I'm obviously quite happy about. It's one of my favourite varieties to work with. It has this excellent spectrum of flavours, going from dubby confectionery raspberry all the way through to some quite savoury, almost smoked meat-like characters. So we also use a little bit of a different style of oak treatment with this one. Treat it to a larger format oak. So 300 litre hogsheads is what we use for the majority of our wine. For this Grenache, we don't want that oak to intrude too much in the way, so we up the size to a 500 litre puncheon. And what that does is it kind of lowers the oak to fruit ratio. So it is still getting that oak aging process without the wood kind of being overbearing on the wine, I suppose. And that'll sit there only for about 9 months. And as with all of our red wines, we look after them pretty well. So we never really see the need to either fine or filter them. And then this will sit in a bottle for about a year before we release it. So if we have a bit of a look at the wine now, yeah, it blows off if I put it over here, but then it comes back. Nice magic glass there. Talking about it is all about that red fruit on the nose. So looking for red cherry, red licorice, and raspberry, and then plenty of that kind of Eastern European spice present, both from the variety and the type of oak that we use. Again, we're talking about 2017, so expect the acid profile to be pretty bright, fresh, to the point of being aggressive. So really, for me, that's a raspberry bootstrap. If you've ever had that raspberry bootstrap licorice. And then a little bit of that gritty tannin creeping down the cheek there. I'll probably be, saying this over and over again, but we are attempting to create a style that certainly is something you can be quite happy drinking today with food, or in a lineup of 6, but certainly will reward a little bit of cellaring here. So I fully expect this wine to, well, it is nearing what I would consider the start of its peak now. 2022 to about 2027 would be my preferred kind of peak happiness drinking window, I suppose. But I've seen some of these kind of more rough and ready style Grenache certainly stand up to 10 or 12 years in bottle, if that's something you're able to do, if you're able to keep your hands off it for that amount of time. I certainly can't. Are we having another one of that? Thank you. Murray, I'll address that one. Actually, no, I'll address that now. So, as Grenache as Grenache kind of ages, that acidity is normally the first thing to go. The palate starts to broaden out, and you get more and more of that kind of red to almost black licorice there. It doesn't quite go that full-blown tobacco box that you'll see out of Shiraz or Cabernet, but the kind of latent spices sitting below will start to make their way up, so you can get some smoked meat characteristic for sure. But we are, it's a high acidic variety, so the acid doesn't drop too much. It always still remains pretty fresh, but it's something you certainly want to start eating with a little bit more. It's not as light and bright. I love it though. It's raspberry and cinnamon, I think, is how best I can kind of put it. But certainly, if you do have the opportunity to try an old Grenache or even a fairly heavily Grenache dominant GSM with 7 to 8 years on it, or even 10 plus, give it a crack, because they don't fall over as easy as you might think, particularly if it's under screw cap. So thanks for that. Awesome. Hopefully that answered your question pretty well. So we're going to jump on to our first of 2 Shiraz, number 4. This is our 2017 H Shiraz. This would be considered our house style. That's how I kind of remember it, H for house. Introductory level wine. So we have about 20 odd hectare total vineyard planting, and it is mostly Shiraz. And the younger plantings, kind of planted in the mid-2000s, about 2006, they're the ones that will contribute most to this style. The 2017 was actually the first year that we made the H, and as such, we did also source a little bit of the fruit outside of our vineyard. So this is the other of our not purely estate wine, and we pulled it from the northern Barossa, a few vineyards out there, a few of our growers. So we were making a little bit more quantity just to sell us wine as such. Really, our winemaking style doesn't change too much. We have these beautiful 5-ton open fermenters, which have these good old cooling jackets. So pretty hands-on. Got to climb up the top of a ladder, definitely with a safety harness to pump them over each day. All OSHA approved. We work this a little bit harder than the Grenache. Shiraz is a bit of a workhorse variety, as I'm sure you're aware. It can handle a bit of punishment. It can handle a bit of roughing around. So normally it'll be pumped over for anywhere between 15 and 30 minutes at a time, twice daily. Fermentation time, again, we're hoping for about 12 to 15 days to really do that. We do let it tick up to about 28, 30 degrees Celsius at one point during the ferment, but for the most part, we like to keep it in that cooler range at 23 to 26. We find is pretty good there. We'll press it off a little bit early, just near the end of fermentation. We like to complete fermentation in barrel. And for this one, a combination of French and American oak. In this case, we even use a little bit of new, so just over 20%, about 21% new and French American oak, 300 litre hogshead, 79% seasoned. So anywhere from about 1 to 4. In this case, with a lot of our Shiraz, we'll kind of see what those batches are able to take, and then adjust that ratio of new to old on how strong we think that one is. So this is then sat in barrel for about 10 months. We'll do a bit of a rack and return, so we'll take it off of the lees that forms post-fermentation. and then make a few adjustments to it. And then again, as always, no fining and no filtration. For me, this is early drinking style where we're not, it'll hold quite well for 2 to 5 years, but we release it to be drunk, to be enjoyed. Certainly it's something that you can take to a barbecue and put a few smiles out there, or, drink on a Tuesday night in this sense. It's got a little bit of that lighter end of Shiraz. You're not seeing too much of that black and purple. It's more back here on the red and blue spectrum. So a little bit of blueberry, a little bit of raspberry, and hopefully a little bit of oak influence there. A little bit of that kind of cinnamon, vanillin from the American, and hopefully a little bit of that kind of cracked pepper that is pretty quintessentially Barossa Valley there. I do love the 2017. It has a vintage, it's really hard to go wrong. Every single wine that you make there, whether it is your entry level or your upper echelon, just has this really lovely elegance to it, this brilliant fruit character, and that freshness from the acid that we were able to maintain. We didn't really need to muck about with the acid whatsoever with this one. And I think this could hold just a little bit more. It's only going to be a little bit too blousy. So that'll sit for another probably 3 to 4 years. But like I say, it is meant to be drunk now with good food and good company. Rachel has just let me know that her computer has cactused itself. So if you do have any questions, I think it is just in the Zoop group chat, which I'm seeing. So yeah, just do a reply all if you do have a question about any of that. So that is the H, and I suppose the second bracket is over for now, which means another time for a lucky dip, and hopefully this time I won't pick somebody that always wins. So let's go with this one. We have John Ellis. So number 12, there he is. Johnny's looking happy. Yes. Put those arms up, mate.
Hold on.
Trevor doesn't like it.
Arms up? No.
Nah, he loves it. Johnny loves it. Trevor's obviously not a fan. That's all right. So, John, you've won our second bottle of fortified Semillon, the White Knight. Get that into frame. So that one's for you, mate. Beautiful. Looks like, yeah. Bit of gentle ribbing in the chat there. I like to see that. Bit of camaraderie. I've got Rachel's ghost appearing on my shoulder a couple of times. Looking over the videos, it looks like most people are still with me, which is lovely to see. Hope I'm not progressing too fast. I'm just going to have another little glass of water.
No, we're at that 50-minute mark at the moment.
So okay.
We're going pretty good.
All right. I've been told, been given the green light to press on. So, number 5. This is our Estate Cabernet Sauvignon, 2017. So last year I was working down on the Coonawarra for DiGiorgio Family Wines, and I'm sure all of you wine aficionados are quite aware that Coonawarra is, considered Cabernet country and Barossa is Shiraz country. But I don't really subscribe to that. I'm secretly a fan of Coonawarra Shiraz. I like that cool climate effect on the variety, and I'm actually a huge fan of Barossa Valley Cabernet. I think the warmer nights and the extra heat and that longer ripening period that we get always allows this variety to achieve the full spectrum of what it can accomplish. And we're even kind of fortunate in, if you want to pretend to be a cool climate Cabernet, you just pick it a little bit earlier here. but you don't get, or you're never cursed with those cool years that Coonawarra can have, where it doesn't quite get there, and you get that greenness and a little bit of tough astringency. So Cabernet does get often sometimes a little bit of chewy tannin, whereas the climate here in Barossa, you leave it out to dry, and it's going to get quite soft and plush, and really start to show off some of the more fruit-derived characters of this wine, which, you know, they're often a little bit more early drinking, but I'm fine actually being able to drink a Cabernet before it's 10 years old. You just can't get away with that down south. Of course, we're talking about 2017, which was cooler anyway, which kind of stuffed my argument up, but that's okay. We have 2 blocks of Cabernet in our vineyard. Block 1A right near the front on the road, and then all the way back at the property, block 5A/B. And we did a combination. We did pick little parcels from both of those blocks and combine them in order to make this one. I've waxed lyrical about our winemaking style here. It's pretty much the same thing. We just adjust pump over times based on the variety and the particular parcel. For this, we were able to keep it pretty cool. We were able to pump that over, and in this case, it was more about 7 to 15 minutes per time. And again, that's just twice daily. We'll check the baume, we'll check the temperature, we'll make those suitable adjustments to make sure that wine's progressing along quite well. We let this one get up to about 28 degrees. We don't want it to overblow too much. This was then chucked into a combination of French and American again. We thought the fruit was really something special here, so this got almost 60%. It got 58% new French and American oak, and it sat in there for about 10 months. So we don't want to, again, swamp the wine. If you let it go for too long in oak, then you have to leave it down in bottle for a number of years for that wood and the fruit to integrate and play well. So we thought, the reds wild ferment as well? No, they're not. As all the reds are inoculated with a known yeast. We have about 3 different yeasts that we pick from, and they're varietal specific. But I won't give you all my secrets. I won't tell you exactly which ones we use. I certainly am open to the idea. We didn't do it this year because yields were so low, but next year, touch wood, yields a little bit higher. And then I certainly am open to the idea of conducting a few trials of wild ferment, because I quite like that little bit of carrot that you can do, or potentially letting it undergo wild fermentation for a day or so, and then inoculating it with a known yeast just to make sure it doesn't go too overboard. But that's a good question, Murray. Thank you for that. Where was I? No fining, no filtering, 10 months in barrel. Pretty basic. But yeah, watch this space for wild ferment reds. We'll think about it. So, what reds are more conducive to wild ferment? Pinot Noir, Grenache. Well, Pinot Noir is often wild ferment. This is a question from Rachel. You can blame her. So, what red varietals are more conducive to wild ferment? Anything really, but Pinot Noir is normally what they muck around with. I certainly wouldn't mind playing around with that Cabernet Franc, but that's a different story. We'll see about that. Back to this one. So, Barossa Valley Cabernet, you see that black fruit. You really you get that classic black currant, you get that black olive, you get that cassis. We're getting a little bit of that methoxypyrazine, that green Cabernet coming through, but really only as tomato leaf. You're not getting, well, I don't get anyway, that green capsicum, broad bean style that you can see a little bit further down south. And the oak there is certainly noticeable, but hopefully not too prevalent. Great flavour. I'm glad you're enjoying it, Mick. Yeah, I honestly think Barossa Valley Cabernet is absolute top gear for that earlier drinking style. I'm certainly one to drink my Barossa Valley Cabernet until my Coonawarra Cabernet is finally coming out of those teenage years and turning into a real wine. So I'm glad you're enjoying that one.
Sorry.
So, yeah, really fruit-driven, like Black Forest, Christmas cake, plummy richness there. The tannins are there. You're getting a little bit of that gripping sensation on your cheeks and tongue, but it's not granular, it's not drying, it's not dusty. It's just got, it's mouth coating, I suppose, I think anyway. And again, we're blessed with that 2017 to keep it nice and fresh. So like I said before, I'd drink this until my Coonawarra Cabernets are ready, but I would certainly be pretty happy if I still had, 1 to 2 bottles after 7 to 10 years. But yeah, easy 10 to 15 year lay down if you want, but look, I'm pretty stoked with that at the moment, to be honest. So you'll enjoy another one there. Beautiful. All right. So once again, I've been instructed by Rachel, hopefully, I assume, with the last sample attached to it, you had a chocolate, which this way we're providing food with our wine and being compliant with all alcohol-related things. Mine's still wrapped up. So this is Barossa Valley Chocolateria, Barossa Valley Chocolate Company, and we have the Murray River salt. Okay, so it's a salted caramel, but watch it, it's liquid inside. Thanks for the warning there, Rudd. I don't want to spill this on my nice jumper. Put it in your mouth in one go is the recommendation. So the salt is from the Murray River, salted caramel chocolate, and you recommend to eat the chocolate before? So the official response was wine, chocolate, wine, but there's no rules here. We're going against the grain. Maybe just smell the wine while you're chomping on the chocolate at least, and then you're going to get a little bit of that bouquet. So that's the chocolate, and I'm a big fan of having chocolate with my wine, particularly if it's dark chocolate. So our final scheduled wine tonight. You always have to save the biggest and baddest for last. We have our 2017, and this is one of our limited release wines. So what that means is it's not made every year, but we do strive to make it in the good years that allow us to. And this is our home block Shiraz, which is, in this case, sourced. We say it's from a single block, and it is majority from a single block, block 3A. So that's a little bit further down the slope. It's getting quite a lot more sun. It's one of our smallest blocks. It's less than a hectare. It's about 0.5 of a hectare. But the fruit concentration that we get from this block is just something else. And we really love kind of exemplifying and showing that off in this single block wine. Apparently we stole it from Mount Adam. We jumped the fence, took a couple of clippings and planted in our vineyard. But don't tell them that. So, oh gosh, this is, it's amazing. Pump over is very gentle with this one. You will see on that nose, it is just bursting with things like boysenberry and plum. better let their partner have the chocolate, keeping the good books. That is good advice, Mick.
Mick, well done.
Mick, you're a smart human being. Really soft. We're looking at maximum 15-minute pump overs, maximum temperature of about 28 degrees. Pumped over twice. And this again finishes ferment in barrel. So dipping at about 2 to 3 Beaumet, the last, say, 3 to 5 days of fermentation, it is actually completed in the oak, and we're trying to integrate that oak a lot better. So that is basically sitting in mostly new French only. We didn't let this see any American. We didn't want to wash out what I think is just a really beautiful, delicate fruit in what can be a little bit awkward with American oak, which can sometimes overwhelm the wine. And that sat there for 17 months in total. So we really thought the fruit from that block was able to hold that oak for an extended period of time. So I'm going to enjoy the experience now. I've got my chocolate, got my wine. Oh my God. That's pretty good, Rachel. That's pretty bloody good.
We find that chocolate match is 90%. It's
Okay.
such a good wine match. And even though it's not chocolate, the caramel in it just gives it that real amazing depth of flavour.
So normally I'm not a fan of milk chocolate with wine, but that caramel really gives it that extra kind of layer there. So, oh wow. Do we have any more of those, or what?
We've got one more.
We're out of bloody chocolate. This is an absolute abomination.
They haven't been able to source their chocolate from overseas. So they'll stop making the chocolate. So hopefully in the next 2 weeks they'll start making it.
Not good enough, Rachel. There's no more chocolate for me, so unfortunately I'm just going to have to enjoy this wine. But what a wine. I'm told that that the club has had this one in the past and quite enjoys it.
Bob anyway.
Bob enjoys it apparently, but good. Well, I hope that you can all see why he enjoys it. So that certainly is a pretty excellent example of the vintage in itself. And really, if you've got bottles of that'll just sit down. Yeah, thanks, Murray. It is certainly a super Shiraz. Yeah, I've had to stuff them right at the back of the cellar downstairs in case I've had, a glass too many and just fancy ripping something open with mates. I just want to keep that one a little bit hidden because I don't want to regret opening too many of them too soon. Because that's something to certainly enjoy. So I do hope you're enjoying that as much as I am, and I think this one's a glass that is going to have to be emptied, and Rachel's going to have to carry me home. But optimal drinking for this one. Look, now if you I think stick in a decanter for a good half hour, 45 minutes, you could get away with it. I certainly would prefer it to be left for at least another year and a half. And then I think as long as it's being, and again, we say optimal drinking window, it is always dependent on how you're keeping it. So if you are looking after it with the right conditions and all that, and sorry, I have to preface with that because I can't just say blindly it'll be great in 10 years. If it's not looked after, it won't. I think optimal for that one will be 2022 till about 2030. Pick your spot. I like them with a fair bit of that primary. So I've got most of mine kind of postmarked for 2024 to 2026. Johnny seems like he's had a pretty good night. I'm very glad that you have had it. This glass is not going to last. So I just want to Rachel's prompting me with the last thing, so I just got to...
Sorry, Russ.
Okay, sorry, that one couldn't go to waste. Some things don't change. Beautiful. All right, so number 3, last pull of the night. We have Mick Schilling, number 25. Hey, excellent. Oh, Mick, you're our last winner of our white night. So I did mention it's a fortified Semillon. Most of it is from 2014.
Yes.
Yeah, 2014. So it's 6 years young. I certainly enjoy it with a little bit of a chill. And have we got those tasting notes online?
They are now.
I recently redid the tasting notes for that wine online on our website, and I've even recommended a cocktail to be made with it if that's your sort of thing, with tonic water and lemon. So an interesting way to enjoy fortified wine. So I'm being given the boot. Rachel will be taking over. Thank you ever so much for your attention and attendance.
I'm going to ask you 2 questions.
You're going to ask me 2 questions. Yeah. Are we going to stop recording first?
No.
No? Do I give you this?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to be kicked off. I've been Russell. Thank you so much for your attention, even though you weren't given a choice because I muted you all. Have a lovely evening. Here's Rachel.
Guys, what an absolute fabulous job from Russell. He can't see because he's walking away, but everyone is clapping, which is absolutely fantastic. I think I've learned a lot from Russell tonight, and I look forward to more of these because every time Russell talks, I learn from him, and I think his knowledge is exceptional, and hopefully over time I can tap into about 1/10 of what he knows, because I think I'll learn a lot from him. Really quickly, guys, I probably forgot at the start to talk a little bit about Hemera and the history of Hemera Estate. So we are pronounced Hemera. We're actually named after the Greek goddess of morning light. So Lindok in the Barossa gets the light first compared to the rest of the Barossa. Now, if you talk to the marketing department, they say it's about 6 minutes before the rest of the Barossa, but as locals, we all know it's about 6 seconds before the rest of the Barossa. So, but it's one huge advantage for us to sort of talk about the light and everything else. We do actually have a painting of Hemera in our cellar door, and Russell and I have actually been talking to see if we can get a new painting commission for down the track. So speaking of cellar door, we have been told with the new restrictions or easing of restrictions that we are allowed to do tastings again in cellar door from the 1st of June. Now, I should probably do a quick shout out to the guys in Sydney. Please drive over at some stage. I hope you've enjoyed the tasting from Sydney. So that's absolutely fabulous. We have actually been tasting tonight in Darius's house. So Darius and Pauline bought the property in '93. They came up here to semi-retire. They actually owned a light shop in Adelaide, and they saw that there was vineyard on the property. Obviously, the oldest plantings is 1912, and they thought it would be romantic to have a winery. So they opened up Ross Estate in '98 and '99. Cellar door opened for the first time. I do want to sort of do a little quick chin, guys, to both Bruce Teeley, who I knew a number of years ago when I first came to the Barossa, and Pauline, who passed away just over a year ago now. And the fact that we're in their house at the moment, I think would be a very nice chin to Pauline and Darius. And to Bruce as well. And I think we should be doing a chin to Russell shortly. I will actually be asking Russell what his favourite Hemera wine is, so I'm just giving him a little bit of a pre-warning there. Before we finish tonight, I will pass over to Ann Cooper. I think that's the correct person I'm going to be passing over on behalf of the Bruce Tilly Wine Club, just to say some final comments. So I will make Ann host at the very end, and if he does need to talk to someone else or someone else needs to talk, he'll just make them the host. You would have all noticed, hopefully, that there is a little order form, which you can't properly see. There we go. A little order form that I included with this tonight. And you're all getting what we call club pricing, which is actually 30% discount. So that H Shiraz that you were drinking tonight, for example, comes down to $15.40 a bottle. You'll see we've got a few specials by the cases on this tasting sheet as well, and we've got a special deal. Any wine that is purchased by through cash, any dozen that's purchased through cash, and Bob's happy to potentially take the money and bring the money in. You will actually get 13 to the dozen on top of that. So not only do you get your 30% off, but you will get 13 to the dozen. The guys in Sydney, we will do free freight for 6 bottles or more as well. And I think everyone who won the raffle tonight are locals, so you can either pick up from the cellar door or Bob will take to the next meeting that you guys have. So I think we've had a pretty amazing night tonight from Russell. So I am going to get him back very quickly, and then we'll throw over to Ann. Russell, what is your favourite wine here at Hemera Estate? Because I have a feeling it might be on the list of a couple of wines that you didn't taste tonight that were worth mentioning.
All right, it looks like I'm being strong-armed and revealing my preferences. Look, I did mention before that I've worked in France, and I did work in Châteauneuf-du-Pape, which is Grenache dominant. So obviously I'm quite pleased we have a few plantings of that. But when I was down in Bordeaux, which is obviously known for Merlot, Cabernet, and lesser known for Cabernet Franc, I was privy to a few of the single variety styles of that wine. So Cabernet Franc is a wine that we also are very fortunate to grow here. It has been used in our blends for a long time, but the last few years we've been making it as a single variety, and it's something that I every year kind of get excited about and am experimenting on. So I really do love our Cabernet Franc as a variety.
So no, I've just been keep talking. Sorry.
That's okay. Looks like Rachel's getting inundated with messages.
These guys are to be put as hosts next.
Okay, not a problem. Just been going under some directions. So yeah, this year, the Cabernet Franc that I played around with, we actually managed to secure a few pearly fermenters, which are basically, if you turn a barrel on its side and knock the head out, it would look a bit like that, but it's a properly made barrel ferment wine. So did a cool barrel fermented Cabernet Franc this year, which I'm super stoked to do. And hopefully that looks pretty sharpish in a year or so. And hopefully that garners an interest next time if I get to host you lovely people. I can maybe sneak an example of something like that, and because that's a very near and dear wine to my heart.
I think we're about done, so we just need to make Deborah Rundle host. Okay,
so I'm going to change the hosting to Deborah Rundle. We have a few messages in the chat which Rachel will attend to read, and otherwise...
Yes, the cash discount. There you go. Yes, guys, the cash discount appears is for straight and mixed dozen. So if you buy a mixed dozen, you will certainly get a 13th bottle for free. So, as I said, Bob is happy to coordinate the cash if that's easier for everyone. Otherwise, you can fill out the order form with your credit card details, and we can organise either pick up at cellar door, because we're allowed to do that now, or for the Sydney guys, we can certainly send to Sydney. So yeah, so absolutely no problem with that. And we are now going to throw over to Laurie and Deborah as our as the MC and a response from the Bruce Tilley Cup.
Just as one final thing, if you did have any other questions that you didn't get the opportunity to ask tonight and would like to do send them via email, I'm more than happy to put together an FAQ, any technical questions or otherwise. So yeah, last thank you. You guys have been really great, and have a good evening. Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, yes, I think an applause is in order. Well, we've drawn the. I'm not Deborah Rundle. I'm Laurie Rundle. Even though the name says Deborah on there, it's Deborah's iPad. But well, we've drawn the raffle and the wine has been won. Congratulations to those that have won some of these amazing wines tonight. I would like to thank Rachel Duncan, cellar door manager, winemaker Russell Cutting, and Hemera Estate for their hospitality and presentation this evening.
Jesus, Lord.
I hope you can all hear me. I can't hear you, but maybe wave if you can hear me, and that'll give me some comfort. Good, thank you. And further acknowledgement to our committee members. Thank you all for making this possible. This concludes the evening, and I thank you for your attendance and contribution to tonight. Next month, your committee will be convening early in June and will report to each of you via email to confirm details of our next meeting. It is hoped and expected that we'll be meeting again soon. Thank you for your patience while we all work through this, these present circumstances together. Thank you. I've had a great night. These have been amazing wines. Russell and Rachel, thank you again. Fantastic. All the best. Over to you.
Good work, all. Well done.
He's host, he has to come.
It was good. A bloody skin on this thing. No.
No, Deborah Rundle's the host. So just maybe.
If everybody's happy, we can just click on leave down the bottom corner.
You can click on leave meeting, and that'll knock you out. Yep. Thanks, guys.
Can you